Welcome to the Truth and Liberty Show, where trusted leaders bring biblical insights to important issues to help you stand for truth and effect godly change in our nation and in our world.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Truth and Liberty. On today's show, we're going to show how the left has undermined the national security of the United States. My special guest today is retired Major General Joe Arbuckle. General Arbuckle served for over 30 years in the United States Army. He now leads a group called Flag Officers of America, and they keep their pulse on what's happening not just in the military but in our culture. And they speak out occasionally, writing very influential letters where they chronicle what is happening in our government and in our culture, and a great organization that have done a lot to bring awareness to the damage that the leftists under Barack Obama and Joe Biden have done to our national security. You know, the principal purpose of government is to secure rights. Our Declaration of Independence says that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. You know, if you don't know the purpose of something, then the chances are really high that you will end up abusing that thing. And you know, whenever you use something for a purpose for which it's not intended, you will cause harm. Take, for example, let's say I was going to build a doghouse, right? If I wanted to build a new doghouse for my dog, and I've got my nails and I've got my boards and I've cut everything to size, but then it's time to start nailing the boards together and I can't find my hammer. So I grab, here's my guitar laying here. And I begin to try to nail that nail in with the guitar. What's going to happen is, first of all, the guitar will be destroyed and the nail will not go in very far, right? This is what happens when we use things for a purpose for which they were not designed. Government, you see, is not an accident. It is not an invention of man. Government actually was ordained by God. We see this in Romans chapter 13, where the Bible teaches us that the powers that be are ordained of God. I'll get to that later. We also see in Genesis chapter 9, verse 6, the Bible shows us where government was ordained by God. It was after the flood of Noah. You know, what led up to the flood of Noah was increasing wickedness. Wickedness and violence and corruption filled the earth. It got so bad, the violence filled the earth, that God had even regretted that He even made man. And one of the very first things He told Noah when Noah got off the boat was, "Whosoever sheds man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed." This was the first time after 1,700 years of creation that God gave man power to take dominion over other men, only in instances where man infringes on the rights of other men, in that case, taking the right to life. So when man kills a man, he loses his right to live, and man has the authority under God to impose that penalty. Romans 13 tells us that the purpose of government is to restrain evil, to punish evil, to restrain evil. This is what's reflected in our Declaration of Independence when we say that government exists in order to secure rights. You know, the problem is that the left, the political left, doesn't have this understanding. Or if they have it, they don't like it and they don't abide by it. Rather, they think that government is man's invention and that man can do whatever he wants with government. He can use the power of government to reorder society, to even remake mankind into a different image, into a different reality. This is the heart and soul of all utopian philosophies. We can change things. We can achieve paradise on earth by the power and force of our collective will in the government. This is 100% anti-God, anti-biblical. It is the spirit of Antichrist. What does our military exist for? The United States military exists to protect the United States from external forces that might infringe our rights or take away our liberty, including our sovereignty and everything else. America's military actually has an incredible record of bravery, tenacity, excellence, humanity, and honor. Like the Marine song says, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, our military has represented our country, for the most part, with honor and excellence throughout our generations, with bravery, excelling, going above and beyond to fight our wars, to defend freedom and democracy. Time and again, our military has come to the defense of not only our allies, but of America's vital interests around the world and the victims of oppression and tyranny. Where would the world be today if it weren't for the American armed forces? World War I probably would have been lost to the Germans. Certainly World War II would have been lost. Soviets, the Russians may have been able to defeat the Germans in World War II, but then all of Europe would have succumbed to Soviet communism. And speaking of communism, who would have resisted Russia during the Cold War? As one after another, countries were falling to Marxist subversion, everywhere from Laos and Cambodia and Vietnam to Cuba and places in the Western Hemisphere. And where would the world be today if it weren't for the United States standing up against Islamic terrorism? Right? The United States almost single-handedly, I don't mean to diminish the contributions of other countries, but the United States has fought the war on terror in ways and with power that the rest of the world could not or was not willing to bring to bear. How about fighting drug lords and dictators in Central America and Somalia? And I could go on and on. But today, America faces an incredible enemy, an incredibly powerful enemy in communist China. We in America have allowed China to grow to extremely alarming levels of military power. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, China was a massive nation, but they were not a serious military threat to the United States. But us, in our greed and in our, you might say, naivete, underestimated the intentions and the ability of the Chinese. And so we opened up normal trade relations with them because we wanted cheap labor. That's the bottom line of it. And since that time, China has grown and grown and grown to where they now have the second largest economy in the world, with a gross domestic product of approximately $28 trillion a year, where they have by far the largest army in the world with over 2 million men under arms. They have the largest navy in the world with over 700 ships, twice as many compared to the United States of America. Now, their ships tend to be smaller and less well armed, but they have more fighters than the United States. They now have stealth technology in their Air Force. They have stealth technology in their Navy. They have a nuclear arsenal that could wipe out the United States with intercontinental ballistic missiles. You know, overall, I think it's probably safe to say that America still holds a technological advantage in our armed forces, substantially more aircraft overall, but these advantages are rapidly eroding. The United States has some economic advantages, but again, do we have the willpower to stop China if they were to become militarily aggressive? They have made many signs, given us many signs that their intentions are aggressive. They've sent their Navy to patrol around the entire border of Australia. They have threatened Taiwan time and time again, threatened the United States, aircraft and naval vessels in the Great China Sea, and on it goes. Do we have the financial flexibility to fight a war with China? Or are we so deeply in debt now that there's no way we could finance a military buildup sufficient to fight a war with China? Has technology advanced to the point now where a world conflict of that nature would be over in days or even weeks? Would we have the time to do it? You know, our leaders, I'm going to say this, in my opinion, have been asleep at the wheel. They have neglected their duty to the American people. We don't even have the ability anymore in America, our military industrial base, we don't have the ability to produce ships, to build enough ships to defeat the Chinese if it were come to a war in a short enough period. We have major problems with maintenance of the aircraft that we do have. The Heritage Foundation last year produced a report on American military readiness, which concluded that America's military is weak, actually, compared to China. And it chronicled all of these problems. We don't have access to the necessary raw materials to manufacture the computer chips that we need for our military equipment to operate. We are dependent on our number one enemy, China, to produce the computer chips that we need for our military. Now, if that's not insane, I don't know what is. Number two, it's equally concerning as the rise of China is the erosion of our military readiness in terms of personnel, because our focus under the Biden administration and the Obama administration has been to convert the military from a patriotic, liberty-loving institution devoted to the principles of America's founding to a woke ideological machine, a social experiment, if you will, indoctrinating our servicemen and women, pitting them against each other in Marxist philosophy, injecting woke LGBT, DEI, and CRT ideologies. Our recruiting took a massive hit under Joe Biden and Barack Obama to the lowest levels since 1973, the end of the Vietnam War. When you add to this the fact that we had open borders for 4 years under Joe Biden and nearly unchecked illegal immigration under Barack Obama, with the introduction of 20 million illegals into this country, including 100,000 Chinese nationals, including drug cartels, including Islamic terrorists, and many others who hate this nation and seek to destroy it. You have a serious, very serious national security problem on your hand. We have failed as a nation to project strength as needed to protect our own interests and those of our allies. The debacle of the withdrawal from Afghanistan under the first year of the Biden administration still is with us today, as we lost $85 billion in military equipment, a lot of it sensitive and high-tech equipment that our adversaries did not yet possess, as we had dozens of American servicemen killed on the ground during the withdrawal, as our credibility as a nation suffered almost irreparable damage. It led directly to the invasion of the Ukraine by Russia, as they estimated Biden's not serious. He's not going to stand up. He's not going to do anything. He's just a feeble old man. Folks, this is not something to take lightly, because there's nothing more important than having, I don't want to say nothing, there are few things more important than having a strong military that's able to defend the United States of America and our allies. It's because of our military and our recognition that we, as the lone superpower devoted to the principles of freedom and equality under God, then the responsibility for leadership in the world and to defend freedom abroad falls on us. And if we're operating from a godless, secular, humanistic, atheistic philosophy, a leftist mentality, if you will, that thinks, oh, people are basically good, and the real problem we have is we just need to redistribute wealth and teach people, how to be more equitable, or all that other nonsense and garbage, then we're not going to be ready when the threats come. And they will come. In fact, they are already here. But, we have been given a reprieve. We have been given an open window. With the election of Donald Trump, we have an opportunity to turn this thing around. And I believe that Trump is doing his dead level best to do that. But we as Americans must get informed so that we can do what is necessary to restore our nation to the premier position as the sole and leading superpower of the world, and refocus and recommit to defending not only our own borders, but also freedom around the world. And I have today the incredible honor of having on our show as a guest retired Major General Joe Arbuckle. He leads the Flag Officers of America, which is a group of retired admirals and generals that is devoting to spreading the word about these threats that we face, and calling on Americans and calling on our leaders to restore America to its founding principles, to restore the armed forces to a place where the military, our soldiers, our men and women in uniform, have the warrior ethos and the warrior mindset and the unity and cohesion, the preparedness and the equipment that they need to fight America's wars and win. So General Arbuckle entered the Army as a private in 1969. After a year, he was commissioned to be an officer. He was commissioned in an officer candidate school where he graduated in 1972. He was deployed to Vietnam as an infantry first lieutenant, serving as an advisor to the South Vietnamese Army. His career in the Army advanced from then all the way to becoming a two-star general and serving 32 years in the United States Army. He has a bachelor's degree from Western State College and a master's degree from the University of Southern California. He is a highly decorated officer, having received the Distinguished Service Medal, the Bronze Star with Valor with 2 oak leaf clusters, 6 Legions of Merit, 2 Vietnamese Crosses of Gallantry with the Silver Star, the Combat Infantryman's Badge, the Army Parachutists Badge, and inducted into the Army Officer Candidate School, as I mentioned. So what an honor it is to have this decorated, retired two-star general from the United States Army joining us. So don't go away. We'll be right back with a very insightful and very informative interview with General Joe Arbuckle. Before we go, though, before this break, I want you to remember we have a free product for you today. It's Andrew Wommack's booklet, A Biblical Worldview on Socialism. Boy, if we need this teaching at any time, it's today. Why don't you pick up a free copy today by going to the website at truthandlibertygtn.com, truthandlibertygtn.com, where you can share your email and we will send a free copy of this booklet to you right away. All right, so don't go away. We'll be right back in just a minute and a half with General Joe Arbuckle. Are you passionate about standing for truth in the culture but don't know how to get started? Well, Truth and Liberty, our mission is to educate, unify, and mobilize the body of Christ to stand for truth in the public square. And as part of our mission, we provide you with an amazing array of resources on our website. And our website has just been revamped, remodeled, and retooled to be user-friendly. And I'm so excited about it because I believe that there's nothing like it out there anywhere. I want to encourage you today to go to truthandliberty.net and check out the Resources Center and the Get Equipped Center. On our Resources Center, you will find hundreds of links, hundreds of videos, articles, blogs, even America's original founding documents can be found on Truth and Liberty's Resources Center. It's searchable by topic, preset topic, or you can put in a custom search to find exactly what you need and what you're interested in. In the Get Equipped section, we link you to tools created by our strategic partners, including Pray, Vote, and Engage tools. We culture impact teams, civic action teams, biblical citizenship in modern America, biblical worldview training, and more. So go today to truthandliberty.net and find what you need to get equipped to stand for truth in the public square. All right, everybody, we're back now on Truth and Liberty. So glad you're still with us. As I promised, our special guest today is retired United States Major General Joe Arbuckle. So, General, thank you so much for coming on Truth and Liberty today.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here with you, Richard.
Well, and we're honored to have you, and I'm so excited to have your perspective on some of the biggest issues we're facing today as a country. And General, you are the head of the Flag Officers of America. You say it's not an organization. I don't know what else to call it, but whatever it is, it's super influential. Can you tell us about it? What is Flag Officers of America?
Sure, I'd be happy to. It's basically a team. As you said, it's not an organization like many people think. It's a team composed of 3 people, 2 wonderful, patriotic ladies that live back in Maryland and Virginia, one of whom I've met, the other I have not. And they are extremely talented. Mm-hmm. But let me give you some history of how I got into this and the organization.
Absolutely.
So let's turn the clock back to 2016 when Trump was running for president.
Okay.
My wife and I are up in a remote area in the mountains here in Colorado. I'm deep in my retirement foxhole, and I get this email from a retired Army 2-star named Sid Shacknow, who I never met. And he said, attached to this email is a letter endorsing Trump for presidency. Would you please sign it? Mm. And I looked at it and said, sure, I'll sign that. So I sent an email back and said, put my name on this letter. Okay, 4 years passed. It's time for Trump to run for re-election in 2020 in the spring, and I'm looking for another letter email coming from this same retired general. Nothing happened. And so I sent an email back to that address saying, I'm happy to sign a letter supporting Trump's reelection. Send it to me. And I didn't get any response. So 2 or 3 times I went through this iteration. And finally, I got an email from a wonderful lady named Carol Greenwald. And she said, hey, I work with Sid on this, and I've got your emails. I'm sorry to tell you that Sid died.
Oh.
And I said, wow. Okay. And then she called me and she said, since you've expressed an interest in this, how about you taking the lead now for Sid? I said, well, wait a minute. That's not what I had in mind here. Not at all. And so we went back and forth over the course of about 10 days in phone discussions and emails, and she's twisting my arm, and I'm kind of feeling like I'm being pulled in that direction, but I'm resisting because I just didn't want to get into that. And finally, my wife said to me, she's involved in this, I'm talking to her obviously, well, if you don't do it, who will? And my wife knows where to hit me where it hurts, and that did it. That put me over the edge. So I got a hold of Carol and said, all right, I'll do it. And so we put out our first letter supporting Trump's reelection. We had 317 retired flags sign that letter. Now, what we do is we put these letters out based on events. They're not time-driven. So election was an event. All right, we get into 2021, and Biden's in the saddle. On the 20th of January, he does 17 executive orders, which are pretty monumental. Caused me a lot of concern, like doing with the Keystone Pipeline, getting involved in the Iran nuclear deal again, re-engaging the Paris Climate Accords. All those kinds of things are very, very big national security issues. So about March or in April, I started drafting another letter. And I should say at this point that the way we work is I draft a letter, send it to these other 2 really talented ladies. They give some input. We finally put it in final form. An email goes out written by me to a list. We have about 600 or 700 retired flags, generals and admirals, and we ask them to sign them. And we always put a target on the number that we want to get in terms of signatures before we go with a press release. We may say, all right, in this letter we want 200 signers. After that, we'll do a press release, and that is the purpose of these letters, is to get public attention on what's inside the letters, signed by a lot of retired flags. And so it's March or so of 2021. I'm concerned about what Biden is already doing, and so I draft another letter. And in it are about 12 major national security issues that we listed that are of concern. And we circulated that letter around and got about 220 retired generals and admirals to sign that one. And if you don't mind, I'd like to pull out a couple of excerpts from that letter and just read them.
Before you do that, though, General, can I ask you this? What's a flag?
A flag?
Flag officer.
Yeah. It's just a common term that applies to both a retired general or admiral. It also applies to active duty, but in this case, we're only talking about retirees.
Only retirees.
Yes.
Okay, so these are admirals and generals that have served in the United States Armed Forces that are coming together and signing these letters expressing their concern about the policies being pursued by our country.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah.
All tied to national security.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. In this May 2021 letter signed by 220, it opens this way. Our nation is in deep peril. We're in a fight for our survival as a constitutional republic like no other time since our founding in 1776. The conflict is between supporters of socialism and Marxism versus supporters of our constitutional freedoms and liberties. It goes on to mention without free and fair and honest elections, we'll lose our republic.
Right. And so in March or May of 2021, Biden's been in office then, 4 months?
Right.
And you're already seeing an aggressive agenda that is putting these liberties at risk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And our security, our national security at risk.
Okay. How did these things threaten our security or other things?
Well, just take open borders. That's in here as one of the issues. And we know what's happened since then. We have nearly, 20 million illegal aliens in our country, many of whom we don't know where they are. Certainly are terrorists among them. That's a major national security threat. Free and honest elections are also that way because we don't have a constitutional republic without that. freedom of speech,
Yeah.
all those things,
Right.
Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
But here's a very interesting thing in this, Richard. At the end of it, it says the mental and physical condition of the commander-in-chief cannot be ignored. He must be able to quickly make accurate national security decisions involving life and limb anywhere, day or night.
Interesting. And that's May of 2021.
Exactly, we saw it.
And the Democrats did not admit Joe Biden's decline until after his debacle of a debate against Donald Trump in the 2024 election, some more than, three years and 2 or 3 months later, even though it was on display for the whole world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was obvious back at that time frame.
Yeah. Amazing, right?
It is amazing. Here's the other thing
So
that goes.
here's a question, General. I don't want to throw, half of America under a bus here, but what's wrong with a party that will actually put forward a man who anybody with eyes can tell has, I think it'd be mild to say beginning stages of dementia, to be the President of the United States of America?
And create a major national security risk in the process.
Yeah, that's right.
Because we don't know who's making decisions.
What are their priorities in doing
Precisely.
that? It doesn't seem like it's the well-being of the country.
Well, no, it doesn't. It seems like it's power and control to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's what it boils down to.
Yeah.
Power and control.
I think we'll get to this eventually, but one of the things Biden did early on with respect to the military was the Afghanistan withdrawal, and how horrible that was. Can you comment on whether, do you believe he is actually the one that made the decision to do that and was in control of what was happening, or was it left-wing activists in his administration?
Mm-hmm. Can't say how much influence they had, but he did make that decision very, very clearly to withdraw based upon a date on the calendar. I think it was 21 August, and he would not budge from that, but I'll be happy to get into that in just a moment, because there's a final point on this first letter that I think is very interesting. We do these press releases, as I mentioned, after we put out a letter. After that press release on this particular letter came out, within 24 hours, we were called by the leftist media, Politico and some others, and saying, "How dare you question the commander-in-chief's physical and mental condition? How dare you question election integrity?" Those are the two hot buttons out of the 12 that we had in this letter that the left really zeroed in on.
Interesting.
Election integrity and the condition of the commander-in-chief.
They don't care about free speech, Keystone Pipeline, open borders. Yeah, no, because those 2 points that you mentioned are attacks on their power base, right?
Exactly.
On their levels of power. So, okay. And so would you like to comment on the Afghanistan withdrawal, and how detrimental was that to the United States, and from a military perspective, how avoidable was it?
Yeah, I'll be happy to, but in terms of sequences of events, I want to mention one other thing first, Richard. We put this letter out, and it got a lot of attention from citizens, and they contacted us, Flag Officers for America, saying, "Geez, we understand your message, we're concerned. What can we do about it as citizens?" And so that resulted in our Citizens Action Plan, which you have a copy of. And it was based upon getting citizens involved at the grassroots level primarily, but also the state and national level. You got to vote, obviously, that's the first thing. But also listed in this at the top was education. Take back control of our educational system. Get involved with what's going on in your school boards. Run for school boards. Right. You're big into that. You understand very well. And that's the key thing. And we also talked about getting involved in politics at the local level.
Yeah.
Attend your city council meetings and that sort of thing. Law enforcement, make sure you elect sheriffs and district attorneys that will support our Constitution properly. Get involved in news media, and then organize. We mentioned churches in here as a great place to organize to protect our traditional values in our country. So we put that Citizen Action Plan out, and it got a lot of positive attention. That's what we did after that letter. And then later on that year, in August 21, you're now talking about the Afghanistan debacle.
Okay, so before we leave that Citizen Action Plan, though, is that document still available?
It is. It's on our website. Our website is one word, flagofficers4america.com.
Okay. So
these letters and that Citizens Action Plans are there.
Flag Officers 4.
Number 4.
.com or
For America.
okay, Flag Officers for America, and the 4 is the number 4.com.
Yes.
Okay, great. We'll put that on the screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a very simple website maintained by one of our great ladies back east.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so Afghanistan.
Yeah. Okay. So we used the term Afghanistan debacle when we wrote this letter in August, and it called for the Secretary of Defense Austin and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs Milley to resign over their role in that particular decision. They are the chief military advisors to the president on any matter military. It was their job to walk in front of the president and say, no, this is not smart to withdraw by this date on the wall because of the consequences. They did come in. They testified that they appeared before Biden, and they said that they did advise against it. So what we said in this letter was they should retire because at that point they should have told the president, in our military judgment, this is going to have disastrous consequences for our country, and we cannot accept this decision. Therefore, we will retire in protest. Now, had they done that, that would have gotten a lot of attention in the media. And it may have, we don't know, but it may have caused Biden to pause and change his decision, or at least delay it. But they did not. Instead, they saluted and marched off, and we know what happened.
Yeah.
The consequences are listed in this letter, and we were very, very predictive on what was going to happen. For example, we said, now our adversaries are emboldened to move against America due to the weaknesses displayed in Afghanistan. China benefits the most, followed by Russia, Iran, North Korea, and others. Terrorists around the world are emboldened and able to pass freely into our country through our open borders with Mexico.
Did Putin invade Afghanistan before or after the Afghan withdrawal?
Oh, after.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
after.
he sees the United States, absolutely a joke, right? I mean, a terrible performance, weak, inept, abandoning its friends, its allies, leaving $85 billion of equipment behind for the Chinese to take and use, and the Taliban and anybody else they wanted to sell it to. Not to mention the lives that were lost of American servicemen, plus all of the untold number of Afghanis that previously supported our work there who were probably killed, tortured, or whatever. And so Putin sees that, oh, no problem, guys, here we go.
Exactly.
And could it be any more obvious?
No, it couldn't. And again, we predicted that would happen in this letter in 2021. And President Trump often says Putin would not have invaded Ukraine had I been the president back then. Yeah. And he's right.
He's got to be right. So the $85 billion worth of equipment, how damaging, if it were just money, we could replace it, but is it more than that? I mean, did the Chinese or our enemies acquire any technology or other assets through that we're going to pay for?
Sure. They take all that equipment and reverse engineer it and put it into theirs. That's one of their favorite techniques. But they also passed it to other terrorist organizations. It's been redistributed. One thing that bothered me in particular, among the other things we left behind, was our technology and our night vision devices and goggles. We were well ahead of the other adversaries in the world with that, but now they have that technology. And there's other things, obviously. There are some aircraft left behind, some combat vehicles, tracked vehicles, and there's no doubt that some of those weapons are being used, against forces that are friendly to us throughout the world.
Well, General, you mentioned, and we've got other stuff we need to talk about today, but just on this, you mentioned that Biden had a date on a wall that he was bound to for some reason. But let's say, even with that it was a premature, it wasn't properly planned. Were there things that we could have done to make it go better, even by that date? Why was it so sloppy and seemed like disorganized? Was it just not enough time, or were there other factors?
I think time was a major issue there. It was compressed, too short. We were out of Bagram Air Base, for example, in July, by the end of July, prior to the August debacle, basically surrendered in the face of the enemy is the way I put it. Yes, all of that could have been avoided. Speculation I've read is that Biden picked that date, end of August, because he wanted to be able to say, when the anniversary of 9/11 came around in September, that we were out of Afghanistan, just for political reasons. Now, I don't know if that's true, but it makes some sense.
Okay.
But, you know, Trump had announced all along he was going to get us out of Afghanistan, and he was marching down that road to do that. But the difference was his calendar was based upon events. When we accomplish this event, then we will pull out X amount of people and forces. Next event, we'll pull this out. Well planned, well organized. That's not what happened with Biden. It was a date on the wall, and everything was compressed to do that.
Yeah. Well, so back to Flag Officers of America. You have published several letters, right? Not just the ones you've referred to so far. How much influence have you had?
I think they've had quite a bit of influence. You know, we do the press releases, as I mentioned, which get a lot of attention in the media. And in addition to that, it gets to the right decision makers. I'll give you an example. One, let me back up and say we've done 7 letters since I've been involved, and 5 of them have the same overarching theme, and that is we are in danger of losing our constitutional republic to the forces of Marxism and socialism. All right, and then we get into specifics. 2 of them did not have that theme. This is the one we just went through on Afghanistan, and the other was to support Pete Hegseth. But getting back to your question about influencing, we wrote a letter specifically to the leadership of the House of Representatives in May of 2023, addressed to Speaker McCarthy at the time, and Jeffries was the minority leader and the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee in the minority. And what we asked was, we said, we respectfully request that Congress, pursuant to your constitutional responsibilities, take actions to remove all aspects of DEI out of the National Defense Authorization Act for the next year. And then we listed the reasons, and we said our military must be laser focused on one mission, readiness, undiminished by the cultural war engulfing our country. We also said that DEI is dividing, not uniting our military and society. And we went on to say that meritocracy is essential for warfighting readiness. That's what our military has always been throughout our history. And so we went specifically to the leadership of the House, asked them to change legislation to get rid of DEI out of the budget, the defense budget. So that's one example of some influence we've had, and that letter did get read into the congressional record. President Trump, through his executive orders, and Pete Hegseth with his memos to the force, have gotten rid of DEI. They've mandated, let's get rid of that stuff out of the force because of it's so divisive. It's basically caustic. It's a cancer. And so we're headed in the right direction, but that's a linkage between Marxism and readiness. One word, if I had to summarize it, it's divisive.
Yeah. So Marxism puts people into classes and pits one class against another, in order to destabilize the existing order and structure, and then eventually totalitarian government takes its place to impose the Marxist vision on the nation, eventually on the world. That's the whole idea.
Exactly.
And so in our military, the horribly ironic thing is that in America, the United States Armed Forces are probably one of the best integrated and least prejudicial institutions in our country. Am I right about before all this DEI stuff?
Exactly. We always have been. We always have been the most inclusive, I think, institution in America. One statistic is this. There are about 13% of our population, according to the census, that are black, general population, and about 17% are black in the military. Remembering we have a voluntary military. They volunteer to be there. That's over a 30% increase in the military than the general population. Why is that? Because minorities, for the most part, see the military as a place to get ahead. Because they have been judged based upon the content of their character and their performance, and not by their skin color. That's the way it always has been until DEI came along and started eroding that. But we're getting back to where we need to be.
Yeah. So do you think that Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, and the administration are going to be able to eradicate this cancer from the military, or is it going to be a situation where once Trump's out of office, all those seeds are still there and it's just going to raise its ugly head again?
Yeah. 2 answers to that. One thing that has to happen, we are pushing within stars. I'm wearing my other hat now.
And that's another, now that is an organization.
It is an organization, yes, exactly, a nonprofit. We're pushing that legislation occur to codify what's inside of Trump's EO's executive orders. That's the solution to that problem. But to your bigger question there, can we do it? The answer is yes, but it's going to take some time. Now, all the easy stuff has been done, basically in terms of taking down all the signs about DEI, removing the organizations out of the Department of Defense, getting things off the website that advertise it and so forth. The hard part is the mental part, and that is changing what's been embedded in the culture over at least 18 years now, starting with Obama, I would say, in 2008, because leaders we have in place right now grew up in this politically correct culture mindset, including DEI, and so they're accustomed to it, and that's how they've been operating all along. And so the tide has changed, and it's got to be demonstrated that's no longer acceptable and then flushed out of the system.
So what are some of the things that Obama and Biden did in the military? I mean, I've heard stories along these lines. I've heard stories about mandatory, education programs on, America's systemically racist country, white people have white privilege, and all of this sort of thing. But then you also, were there quotas and racial and it's not just race, right, General? There's also LGBT is all in the mix here.
It is.
So can you give us any specifics?
Yeah, gender's included in this, and sexual orientation, the whole thing, anything that divides people. Yes, there was a lot of mandatory DEI training that was infused throughout the ranks in the military. It was required, and that was divisive in itself. Interestingly enough, on that point, when Lloyd Austin appeared before the Senate Armed Services Committee through his confirmation hearings to be the Secretary of Defense, he pledged to the Senate that he would eliminate racism and extremism from the ranks. That's what he said. And they set out on that path. In fact, he had a stand down of the entire 2 million plus people in the Department of Defense looking for extremists. And so this went on for a long period of time.
General, how does he define extremist or racism?
Exactly right. This went on for quite a while, and finally Congress and members of Congress asked him, all right, you've been looking for this period of months now. How many extremists did you find? The answer was less than 100.
Okay.
And they never defined who they were.
Okay. All right, so they couldn't find the boogeyman, I guess, right? But so these classes and stuff like that. What did it and all this training and the special preferences for, racial and sexual orientation, all these things. What did it do to morale in our military?
Well, it caused distrust, obviously, and you can't have that. We have to have total trust and confidence in each other for our very lives in the military. And so when it gets down to simple questions like, well, was that person selected to be a pilot because they're the best? Or was race included in that decision, or gender? And even in the Air Force, there was a time where the Chief of Staff of the Air Force was actively involved in attempting to lower the number of pilots in the Air Force that were white and increase the number of minorities. That's not based upon meritocracy, and that's not picking the best qualified. And so that sort of thing was happening. Same thing as I mentioned earlier with goals. They were called goals, not quotas, but goals for selections on promotions and key assignments like command assignments, key schooling assignments. I want
to shift gears, sir, for just be a little bit more philosophical for just a second, because I don't believe we are not saying, and I wouldn't want anybody to take away from this discussion that we're saying that that blacks or homosexuals, whatever, can't excel in a meritocracy. We're not saying that.
No, of course not.
In fact, I think that the affirmative action DEI way of thinking is the one that is preaching that message, right?
Yes.
Can you, if you agree with me, unpack that a little bit. I don't want to do all the talking.
Sure. Well, as a general statement, the blacks want to be selected based upon meritocracy also, because if one gets promoted to a certain rank or selected for something, they don't want to think that, well, was I selected because of my skin color or because I am the best person? And on the other side of the coin, they don't want whites thinking the same thing either. And that's where this thing is really divisive. When that kind of an attitude creeps into the system, that is bad.
Yeah.
And so that's why the emphasis is on EOs and also from Pete Hegseth that we're getting back to equal opportunity for everybody, no matter skin color, no matter gender, whatever it may be. Everybody's treated the same. That's the way it always was in the military. And also a meritocracy, pick the best. I like to use a sports analogy team, which is easy for everybody to understand. All right, you've got a coach. Coach's job is to win games. You've got a team. The team's job is to win games. So the coach picks the best players to put on the field, no matter what their skin color is. And that's why, 75% of the National Football League, National Basketball Association are black. They're the best players. They ought to be on the field. If that model is okay for sports, and it is, it's appropriate, why is it not okay for our military?
I think everyone's pretty much come to realize now that China is our most powerful and number one threat, external threat today. Can you comment on that?
Sure.
How are we doing?
We're in trouble. We've got a lot of work to do in that regard. It involves funding. It involves time in terms of our industrial base, our production capability, acquisition process, and all that. There are two reports I would cite that get right into that kind of a rating. One is there was a bipartisan congressional commission that was put together on military readiness policy. And last year, they came out with their final report. It's pretty shocking. Part of it said that basically that our military, first it said the world is in their most dangerous situation today that it has been since before World War II. And if we were to go to war, which is a real possibility against a peer or near peer competitor on more than one place, we could lose. It says we could lose. Now, that's a shocking report. There's a lot in it, it's many pages, but that was their kind of bottom line. On top of that, the Heritage Foundation every year publishes what they call their Index of Military Readiness. And they dig into the nuts and bolts in great detail of all the military services and all kinds of criteria. They rate each service independently, and they roll it up into the Department of War now. Last year and the previous year, they rated our military as weak on a scale of 1 to 5. Very weak being the lowest, weak being next, marginal, then strong, and then very strong. So weak is how they rated our military.
Wow. And is this from years of neglect, or
Yes.
Have we been focusing on the wrong targets, the wrong objectives, or what is this just, you got Obama for 8 years, Biden for 4 years, unpack this a little bit.
Sure.
How do we find ourselves here?
Neglect is a good way to put it. We have not had the budget we need in our military to keep up, to replace equipment. We're about 3% of GDP, I believe. And we've said in our letters here, Flag Officers America, we need to be at least 5% of GDP to get to where we need to be with money. The other part was 22 years of fighting the global war on terrorism. That sucked up basically the majority part of our budget to support what we call contingency operations at the expense of research and development and acquisition into buying new things. And that put us way behind because of the war on terror.
Yeah.
And then the other is just a philosophy that we don't need a strong military coming from the left, the political philosophy.
So can you share a little bit more about our military preparedness relative to China's?
Well, that's a tough one to get into. Now, China, numbers-wise, has obviously more ships and tanks and aircraft, I think, than we do, certainly people. I don't know about the quality of their troops. It's tough to really get a handle on that. One of our strengths, of course, has always been our people and our NCO Corps, our non-commissioned officer corps in particular, our leaders, and our initiative, our creativity, our flexibility on the battlefield. Those things are well known but hard to gauge. we've got a lot of work to do in terms of building up things, like I mentioned earlier, to get our combat vehicles, our aircraft, our ships back into the condition they need to be and add to the numbers.
Yeah, so it's not just the number, it's that they're not being maintained,
Condition,
right?
yes,
Yeah.
that's right. And the depot overhaul programs, for example, have been allowed to decline, I think, over the years. Our industrial base is in bad shape, our military industrial base complex, because it has been neglected and not been maintained the way it should be. Our shipbuilding, for example, capabilities. Also overhauling our major combat pieces of equipment, our aircraft. We've got a lot of work to do there. It's going to take time, but the good thing is President Trump realizes that. There's a major initiative right now to improve our industrial base, so we're headed in the right direction. We just need the time and money to get there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, it's not a simple matter. It's very complex, and there's lots of different variables that affect that, right? But Donald Trump has spoken some about the need to obtain rare earth minerals. Is that part of this discussion?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We have allowed ourselves to become dependent upon China primarily for that. It's well known. And there's a major
We're going to depend on our number one enemy to supply a critical ingredient of our defense.
Well, to include microchips, chips.
Yeah.
Everything, basically.
Yeah, yeah. If China were to invade Taiwan tomorrow, what do you think the United States' reaction would be? And would we be able to repel that invasion, or should we even try?
Well, first, we need deterrence to stop that, and we've been talking about that in our state of our military. There's three possible scenarios there, I would say. One is an outright invasion. You've got about 90 miles of open ocean between mainland China and Taiwan. That's a pretty tough body of water to cross because of the conditions. And so I don't think, my opinion is, I don't think they would launch a sea-based and air-based strike against Taiwan coming across there in terms of an amphibious landing. I think what's most likely, if they wanted to move against Taiwan, would be a barricade of some kind, sea barricade, where they would stop the flow of everything coming in and out and basically try to strangle the island. Also tied with that, the third thing would be cyber warfare to shut it down. Now, what would we do in that case would be a very interesting question, because if there's a sea barricade around it, our ships would have to come in there to challenge it, which we would probably try to do, in my opinion. And then what would happen? What's dangerous today, and let me get into another thing that's really important on this, is the face of warfare, Richard, is changing. It's a revolution in technology right now. We see it happening in Ukraine. What's causing it? Drones. Major, major impact today. Hypersonic missiles against ships, for example, is another. Robotics. The introduction of AI throughout all of our systems to include our command, control, and so forth. Space-based warfare. All these changes right now are happening at once. And that's what our Department of War is dealing with, to try to stay current with this technology, get ahead of our adversaries so that we have leverage against them by using these technologies.
Do you think Donald Trump is making progress in improving the state of our preparedness? Or do we still need to be pretty concerned?
It's both.
Yeah.
He is definitely making progress, and morale of the troops is really up. That's so important in terms of readiness. I like to think of readiness in terms of people and things. The people have to be ready, and the things have to be ready, and then they have to come together. So the people part is definitely improving. That's represented by the fact that all of our services, I believe, have met their recruiting goals for this year or will meet them for the first time in quite a long time. Of course, we had a major recruiting crisis under Biden.
Yeah, and I think one of the Flag Officers of America's letters mentioned that recruiting was at the lowest level since 1973, which was right after Vietnam.
Exactly. Well, that's when the all-volunteer military started, was in 1973. So it was the worst since it started.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we've got just a couple minutes left on the show here, General. Can you comment on not the military side, but on what's happening in our country to undermine our identity as a nation, as a free, nation under God and converting us into more of a Marxist country in our schools, in our media, and everywhere else?
Sure. Well, at the top level, I think what's going on right now, well, I know what's going on, is that as a nation, we've moved away from God.
Mm-hmm.
And the left and the dark side has filled the void.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a goal of Marxism, to get rid of God from our country and from people's minds. And that's been going on since the 1960s in this cultural revolution as manifested now in DEI. And it's interesting to look at the 45 communist goals, which they have largely attained. They're read into the congressional record, I think, in 1963. And so basically the problem goes back to us moving away from God. We got to get back into religion. Our country has been indoctrinated through our education system. Mm-hmm. That was one of their goals within Marxism, was to take over the education system and start talking about the advantages of socialism, Marxism. Mm-hmm. And you see that reflected in surveys today, people's attitude towards socialism. Yeah. And the way to turn that around is through education. Mm-hmm. Talking about the other side of this. That's what we're doing right now.
But not just any education, right?
No. It's in the political system. They targeted our legal system. Mm-hmm. Our news media was a major institution that they targeted. Mm-hmm. Just think about this. Would the previous administration, the Biden administration, be in power if it was not for the force of the left media?
No.
That tells you something.
Anybody with eyes knows that, right?
They targeted that, obviously.
Yeah.
And then they also targeted our military, kind of as the last major institution.
So, General, just this is an off-the-wall question, real quick here. You've been involved, your entire career in the military, serving your country and so forth. Tell me, from your perspective, how far fallen has the Democratic Party, how far leftists have they lurched in your lifetime? Because I think back to JFK and the Democratic Party of the 50s and the 60s, and it bears no resemblance to what we see today.
Absolutely. Well, in fact, my relatives from the 50s and 60s were all Democrats. Mm-hmm. It was a totally different party back then, as you've said, and they have drifted way over to the left to the point today I'm not even sure they're a party. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you can call them a party versus an ideology.
Yeah, and a Marxist ideology, yeah. An atheistic ideology, right?
Comes back to the themes of our letters. We're losing our constitutional republic to the forces of Marxism.
We're out of time for today. I would love to continue this conversation. I would say on that last point, though, that Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, attempted to make a motion that the Congress have a prayer for Charlie Kirk's family. Yeah. And she was booed down by the Democrats on the floor of the House of Representatives just a few weeks ago. General, it's been awesome having you on the program. You've got to come back and we can talk in more detail about these things. Thank you so much, sir.
My honor and pleasure. Thank you very much, Richard.
And for all of you who are watching today, thank you so much. It's been a great show. Be sure to check out Flag Officers for America on their website, and also go to truthandlibertygtn.com and get a free copy of Andrew's booklet, A Biblical Worldview on Socialism. God bless you. We'll see you next time here on Truth and Liberty.